Taming the High Cost of College, Episode 35.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with David Galehouse. He's an author and expert on athletic recruiting and playing athletics in college, and he's giving us a bunch of great information on how to be recruited and how the process works. He also provided some great tidbits available at his website that we can go check out. And as always, show notes are available at tamingthehighcostofcollege/35. This is the 35th episode, so that's how you would find the notes for this particular episode. And of course, notes are available for all my past episodes as well. And then today on Brad's Recommends, we'll talk a little bit more about taking advantage of this podcast and how to do that. All right, let's jump into the interview with David. All right, today we're sitting down with David Galehouse. He is the owner of a website called Varsity Edge. And Varsity Edge is a website that helps athletes pursue college athletics. Welcome, David.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. So I'm assuming you've been an athlete yourself and so forth. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your history and how you came to be running this website?
Well, I had a pretty challenging recruiting process in high school. I was a pretty competitive golfer. I had aspirations to play in college. By the time my senior year rolled around, I got a little burned out from golf. So that created some recruiting challenges. In the spring, I began playing baseball, which I hadn't played since 8th grade, and I really wanted to play baseball in college. And by the time I realized that, it was a little too late in the recruiting process. So I scrambled to try to find some places to play, but I wasn't very successful in doing that. So I ended up taking a year off from school. The following year, I attended a small Division II college in Florida called Rollins College, but my skill level just wasn't ready to play at that college. So I ended up transferring after a year there, and I ended up at Fairfield University in Connecticut, which was a small Division I school, and I walked onto the team and played 2 years there. My second year there was a little challenging. I had suffered a pretty bad injury between my first and second year there, and after my second year, I decided baseball, really didn't have the same role in my life as it did a couple of years prior. About my senior year in school, I was sitting in the library one day and I was kind of reflecting on all the experiences I had in the last 4 or 5 years with college athletics and the recruiting process and the struggles I had. And I started writing down some notes. And a couple of years later, I had so much information, those notes turned into what Varsity Edge is now. So it was really, the website's kind of a way to help parents and students where I didn't have that information available when I was in high school.
Okay, great. So sounds like then if we went to your website, what kind of information is available there? Is it like helpful for all sports and that kind of thing? Who typically is going to go there?
I think it can benefit any athlete and family. One of the misconceptions is that highly recruited athletes don't need help with the recruiting process, but I like to stress that everyone needs help in selecting the right school. So even though the scholarship athlete's getting multiple offers, they still need to make a diligent decision as to what school they pick. So the website will find different information on college applications and visiting schools, information on financial aid, recruiting information, NCAA rules, life as a college athlete, interviews with college coaches, just a lot of different topics on not just recruiting, but researching and selecting colleges.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about researching and selecting colleges.
Sure.
What kind of process do you recommend families get into as far as doing the research? I mean, what do you mean by research?
Well, let's talk about some of the common mistakes families will make, and that will kind of cover what they should do, opposite of the mistakes. I think the first big challenge is a lot of families dismiss academics. Kids don't take their studies as seriously as they should. And if you don't have the grades to get in a particular college, it really doesn't matter how good an athlete you are. You can, throw a football 70 yards. You can throw a baseball 100 miles an hour. If you don't have the grades and test scores, your recruiting process is over for a lot of schools. So I think the most important thing is to be an academically strong student starting the day you walk into high school as a 9th grade. I think the second challenge is assuming you're going to be discovered. There's a lot of families, they sit in the stands at their high school games and they assume college coaches are at those games, watching their son or daughter score 30 points in a basketball game. And in reality, college coaches rarely attend high school games to scout athletes. It's not a good use of their time, and their season is taking place the exact same time as yours is. So they literally don't have an opportunity to go scout high school games. Overestimating ability is always a challenge. Families have pretty high perceptions of their skill level. So it's really important to try to evaluate your skill in high school as it may apply to different colleges. So I think you first have to look at how you perform against, just students at your high school. How do you perform against opposing players that you're playing in high school? How do you perform against other kids in your state or region that you might not play on a regular basis? And then how do you perform against kids, at a national or international level? And if you're a star at high school, but you're struggling against kids who might not be in your league, that might be an indication that your skills might not be as high as you think they are.
Let me back up a little bit. You just
Sure.
mentioned something about how do you rate your level, and parents, or a lot of times it gets overestimated.
Yeah.
So how do you figure out, again, other than what you just mentioned, is there ways to get a good gauge of your skill level? Is there people you should talk to, or?
One of the tips I try to provide people is I try to get them to seek out other players they played with or against that were older than them and find out what colleges they attended and how they performed at that level, because that's one good way to do it. Kids really need to get out of their league. They need to attend different camps and showcases and play on travel teams that go to different areas in the region or country to kind of see what the talent is in other places, and that's really a good indicator. If you're traveling to different tournaments throughout the country and you're still succeeding at a high level against other really good athletes, that may be an indicator that you're a very good athlete.
Okay. So then I guess I've seen a lot of these like camps, and I mean, once you start getting into a certain level of athletics, you start getting a lot of mail and invitations to camps and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So do those things have a place in figuring out where you stand, and how would you use those types of things?
So college coaches really, in order to recruit you, they really need to see an athlete play in some capacity. Ideally, it would be a meaningful game where something is on the line. Coaches want to see what type of athlete you are, how good you are at your sport, how you handle adversity, how you handle winning, how you handle losing, how you interact with your coaches, your teammates, the opposition, referees or officials. All those things are important. That's challenging sometimes. You have these 1 or 2 day showcases where you might take 10 or 15 swings in the batting cage or field 10 balls at shortstop. Those don't always tell a coach how you really handle pressure. So there's a fine line between what events you can succeed at and what events you can't. I think one of the best ways to get in front of coaches is to see if they have a college camp at their campus. And that will really give you, a 2 or 3 or 4 day opportunity to play in front of that coach for a long period of time, where that coach can really see who you are, not only as an athlete, as a person. And that will give an athlete an opportunity to see what that coach is like as a person, what their staff is like, and what that school is like. What happens a lot of times is you have families that they just sign up for a random showcase or a random camp without really evaluating their skill or evaluating what that opportunity is going to provide them. So if you are not able to play football at Notre Dame, but you sign up for the Notre Dame football camp, it doesn't matter how many times you run by that college coach. If you don't have the ability to play there, no camp or no showcase is going to get you recruited by those schools if you don't have the skill to play there.
Right. Now, and I've also heard that, again, most camps and so forth will take anybody that's willing to pay. I mean, certainly there's a certain level that you need to be at. But the showcases sometimes are a money-making opportunity where, yes, the coach wants to see that top 10 or 20 people that he's invited, and he's going to look at those. But there's another 100 people there that are helping pay the bills and make it a profitable endeavor.
Yeah, you're always going to have instances of that. That's why it's really important to try to get an idea of what your skill set is and to find out what colleges are going to be attending what event. So if you're a low-level Division III player and there's a showcase where it's 20 Division I coaches, it doesn't matter what you do at that showcase. You're probably not going to get recruited by those coaches because it's just not a right fit.
Right. Okay.
So it's really important to evaluate, to find out where college coaches are going to be, what events they're going to be at before you sign up for an individual event.
And just out of curiosity, how much do these types of camps typically cost? And is there a different price points? And does it matter what you pay? I mean, does the low cost or high cost make a difference?
I haven't really researched any individual prices, so I couldn't give you an accurate answer off the top of my head.
Okay. And again, do you think so it's more trying to build a relationship than it is learning something? Is that accurate?
Well, there's, showcases have an instructional element to them, so you can always learn something from a new coach, and it's a day where you're spending 5 or 6 hours on the field and going through different drills and exercises. So you can take something away from that. I think kids have turned it more into a college recruiting opportunity than a learning tool.
Okay. So then, obviously, as you're working through the process, the NCAA has a lot to say with how things should and shouldn't happen and so forth. Can you explain a little bit about how the actual process works?
As far as, in terms of rules, or?
Yeah, as far as, what is the NCAA and why do people care about it? And I know you have to register with the NCAA at a certain time. And so how, obviously there's a lot of rules for the coaches and rules for the athletes and
yeah, so
kind of the whole process.
So funny story, the NCAA rulebook for college coaches is about 500 pages thick. When coaches are tested on it, it's an open book test, and some of them still fail it.
Okay.
So we could have an entire show on NCAA rules. I think a good thing for listeners to do is the NCAA has a PDF document entitled NCAA Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete. So if you search for that online, it's a 30-page PDF. It's a free document available to anyone. And that will outline all the important steps and qualifications high school athletes need as far as the NCAA goes. As far as the clearinghouse goes, I do have a couple tips for that.
Okay.
So students during their sophomore year should go to eligibilitycenter.org and register with the Eligibility Center. They certify any NCAA athlete that wants to play at the Division I or Division II level. So please note, they have nothing to do with Division III.
Okay.
So at the end of your junior year, your guidance counselor should send an official transcript to the clearinghouse. And then at the end of your senior year, your guidance counselor should send proof of graduation just to show that you completed high school. And basically what the center does is make sure every student interested in D1 or D2 is eligible. And again, on that 30-page NCAA document, there's a list of core courses you need to complete at your high school. And if you ever have any question, you can contact the center, or your guidance counselor can go online and research to make sure that the classes you take at your high school have been approved by the NCAA and you'll be eligible.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that in order to be eligible to play, at least at the D1 and D2 level, you need to have certain courses.
Yep, there's 16
in high school
courses you need to take. It varies slightly from D1 to D2, but it's basically, math, English, social science, and along those lines.
All right. Are there any other requirements? I believe there's like grades and test scores as well.
Yep. So to be eligible, NCAA uses a sliding scale that basically looks at your GPA and looks at your ACT, SAT. So the lower your GPA, the higher your SAT, ACT score you need to be. So if you have a 2.0 GPA, which is a C average, you need at least a 10-10, I believe, on the SAT math and verbal sections just to be eligible.
Okay. So I have heard of athletes being ineligible due to academics, so that they didn't quite make the cut there.
Yep. So they can attend the school, but they just can't have interactions with the athletic program for the first year.
Okay. So if you're on the edge of being ineligible, I guess I've heard of athletes doing things like test prep in order to increase their test scores, or tutoring to increase their grades. Do colleges, do they have an opinion on that? Would they hold that against you, or is that a wise thing to be doing?
I think the college is just concerned whether a kid is eligible or not. I don't think they're as concerned as to how he got there.
Okay, great. So I guess the other side of the coin when it comes to college athletics included, but anybody, is the financial side of how do you pay for college. And I think everybody's heard about the star athlete that gets the full ride because he's the starting quarterback or whatever.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about it? How do you know if it's likely you'll receive scholarship money? Does everybody get scholarship money? How does that scholarship side of things work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of families, I like to say, chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that doesn't exist. After Division I football and Division I basketball, there is not a lot of athletic recruiting money that goes to athletes for the simple reasons that most sports don't generate a revenue. You have a lot of state schools that they don't throw a lot of athletic money in non-revenue generating sports. So like I said, after football and basketball, there's a lot less money to go around than people think.
Okay. So if you are in the two money sports, the football and the basketball, does that bode well for you then? Does that pretty much guarantee a scholarship, or how do the coaches decide? Because I've heard of people walking on and not getting much money, and I've heard of people walking on and then earning a full scholarship because of it. And
Sure. So football and men's and women basketball, they're what's called head count sports. Division I football has 85 scholarships. Division I men's basketball has 13, and off the top of my head, I don't know what women has. I want to say 15, but I'm not sure. You either get a full scholarship in those sports or you get nothing. So if you're offered a scholarship, it's going to be a full scholarship. And if the coach has used all the allotted scholarships they have for a given year, they may ask you to walk on, and you might be eligible for a scholarship in year 2, 3, or 4 if the coach chooses you to award a scholarship.
Okay. So then things can change year over year?
They can.
Now, if you are awarded a scholarship, whether it's, say, a full ride or even just a token few $1,000s,
Yep.
do you get that every year then, or how does that work?
That's a good question. A few years ago, the NCAA, there's always a challenge of kids, they don't perform and their scholarship gets cut in year 2, and it happens in football and basketball. The NCAA allowed schools to offer a 4-year scholarship, so some of the bigger football schools they'll offer a 4-year guarantee now to entice kids to come to their school, but not every school is doing it, and they don't have to do it.
Okay. So it sounds like, again, in the highly recruited football, that would apply, but not, is that likely to apply to, I don't know, swimming and rowing and all the other sports?
Probably not.
Okay. So tell me, going back to the mistakes, I know I cut you off there. So is there any other big mistakes on the scholarship or recruiting side that you see families getting involved in?
I think one of the mistakes people make is just a general lack of research on individual schools and athletic programs. It's really important to kick the tires at every school, with every athletic program, with every coach. I really encourage people to evaluate rosters at a given program, because a roster can tell you a lot about how a coach recruits and what a coach looks for. If it's a smaller school, you could see the coaches recruiting, local kids that live 20 or 30 miles away. But there's, some smaller D3 programs that are national powerhouses at the Division III level, where you look at the roster and there'll be 15 kids from 15 different states. And that, is an indication that that coach has a more aggressive recruiting practices and is reaching out across the country to try to find the very best players for that school.
Okay, yeah, and that, I guess, reminds me of something else you said earlier, that a lot of families believe that coaches are going to find them. And so if coaches aren't going to find you, what do you do about that?
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of people sitting in the stands of the high school thinking that coaches are there and they're going to get discovered. And there's the very top athletes in the country are discovered just because of the profile they've created and how much competition they've been in. But most students need to really aggressively market themselves to college coaches. They need to show the coach they found their school, that they're interested in their school, that they've interested in their athletic program. A good way to start is every college has an online recruit form that recruits can fill out. Basic contact information, athletic information, academic information. And that form will go directly to the coach, and that will just get your name into the system and show the coach that you found the school on your own, which is a big step in itself because a lot of people aren't proactive.
Okay. So when should families start doing this kind of thing where they're trying to work with coaches or get their information out there?
So the timeline is going to vary depending on the skill, your skill, the level you're trying to play at, and what schools you're interested in. The top schools are finding kids in 8th and 9th grade and sending them letters to try to get them on their radar. And the small Division III school down the street with a small recruiting budget and just one head coach, he's not sending 9th graders letters. So it really depends on who you are as an athlete and what schools you're researching. You definitely need to start doing research your junior year, and the summer between your junior year, you definitely need some type of plan to try to play in front of college coaches so they can see you play in person, so they can start to make evaluations in the fall and winter as to what kids they're going to recruit.
Okay. So it sounds like you might start freshman or sophomore year if you're a higher end athlete or you think it's going to be a bigger deal or bigger process. But no matter what, by junior year, you should be contacting coaches and putting some sort of plan together.
You're not going to be emailing coaches and calling coaches in 9th grade. But if you're one of the elite athletes in the country, college coaches are going to be aware about you in 9th grade. But I think before you reach the summer of your junior year, you need to really have to start researching colleges and have some idea of what level you might want to play at and schools you might be interested in, so you can go into the summer between your junior and senior year and really have some impact on your recruiting process. Because once school starts in the fall of your senior year, it's often too late to play in front of college coaches, especially if you play a spring sport like baseball or tennis. Doesn't matter what you do your senior year, it's too late to get recruited at that point because applications have already been sent out and acceptances have already been sent back.
Okay. So you need to start a little bit earlier because of that as well.
Yep.
So what about how do you then deal with coaches? I mean, I'm assuming now that just about the whole wide world is on email and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I'm assuming that you're not necessarily mailing letters per se anymore, but you can do things electronically. Do most coaches work electronically now, or?
It varies. Like I said, the online recruit form is a good place to start. Once an athlete fills that out, I would follow up with the coach via email, and then I would try to follow up with the coach via phone. One of the asterisks in the NCAA rulebook is, there's many contact rules for coaches at the D1 and D2 level. There's virtually no contact rules for athletes. So you can call a coach as often as you want, as many times as you want. You can call 50 times a day, and if that coach picks up the phone, you can have a conversation with them, even if you're a freshman in high school. Obviously, you might not call them, but I'm saying there's no rules stopping you from doing it. If you leave a message for the coach and it's not the proper time for them to call you back, they can't, but you can keep calling them as often as you want.
Oh, okay. So all the no contact rules are really on the coaches, not on the students.
Yeah, the contact rules are really on the coaches.
Okay. Now, what about parents being involved? Do parents talk and work with coaches, or do students? Or I know my recommendations in general when we talk about just college planning in general is the student is definitely the college's customer, and they definitely want to be hearing from the student, not mom and dad.
Yeah,
they don't really want mom and dad saying, "Well, little Johnny really likes your school." It's like, well, how about little Johnny tell us that?
College coaches do not want to recruit parents, and I know coaches that have unrecruited athletes because of the involvement of the parents. You would be shocked at how many high school athletes are afraid to call a college coach on the phone and have a conversation with them because it's just not natural for them, or they're nervous. And that will go a long way in getting you recruited. If you can show a level of maturity in calling a college coach and trying to have a meaningful conversation with them and trying to find out more about them and their program and what they're looking for, that will go a very, very, very long way in getting you recruited, as opposed to your mother or father calling.
Right. And again, I think probably the same advice that I tell parents on the financial aid and so forth is parents need to be there to answer the tough questions about, money and how much the family earns and the kind of stuff that students generally don't know and certainly not well enough to answer properly. So they need to be there for support, but they're not the one that's driving the meetings and the and starting things. And certainly you don't want during a meeting to have the student sitting in the corner with their phone out, kind of ignoring what's going on because they're bored. That doesn't look well in any situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay for parents to ask some questions in the recruiting process that the son or daughter might not be aware of or might not think is important. You just don't want the overbearing parent calling and saying, my son's the best player at my high school, you should recruit him.
Right. It's time to let little Johnny do it on his own.
Yep.
All right. Well, it's time to wrap things up. So before I let you go, I'd like if you would spend a few minutes. Can you give us 2 or 3 tips, again, that are kind of related to what maybe we've talked about and that can help students
Sure.
and families through this process?
I actually have 5 key factors that can sum up the recruiting process.
Great.
Academic, athletic, social, financial, and geographical. So if your academics aren't in order, your recruiting process can end faster than it starts. So like I said at the beginning, it's very important the day you walk into high school to take academics very, very seriously. Because if you can get into a school other recruits can't, that's an advantage for your recruiting process. The athletic aspect, if you can't play at a particular program, no amount of camps, showcases, video, contact with the coach is going to get you recruited there. So it's really important to focus on programs you can potentially play at. The social aspect, if you're not interested in a particular school, if you're not going to be happy at that school, that might not be a good fit either. The financial aspect, obviously, if you can't afford to pay for a particular college, you kind of need to evaluate what you're willing to take on for student loans, how much you can pay, how much financial aid you might get, and so forth. And geographical, if you're from New England and you might want to go play baseball in Florida, that's something you have to consider. You need to consider how happy you're going to be, 10 minutes down the road from where you live or 2,000 miles away from where you live, whether or not your parents want to go to your games and so on. And I always tell people if any one of those 5 factors is out of balance, there may not be a fit with that particular school. Because any one of those 5 can cause serious problems for an athlete's happiness. So it's important to try to find a balance between all of those when picking a particular school.
Wow. Yeah, that's some great tips there.
And the coach is going to be doing the same exact thing. If you can't get in, he's not going to recruit you. If you can't play there, he's not going to recruit you. If he or she doesn't think you're going to be happy at that school, they're not going to recruit you. If they don't think you can afford to stay there, they're not going to recruit you. And if they don't think you're going to be happy 2,000 miles from home, they're not going to recruit you. So it's the same. Those 5 things apply to both coaches and families.
Right. Absolutely. Well, you've given us a lot of great information, and I know you've got a website. Can you tell us the details on how we can learn more about what you do and where we can get more information and where we can contact you?
Sure. Parents can go to varsityedge.com. All my contact information is available on there. I actually developed an action article for this interview that any listeners can go to and access, and that will talk about some of the things we talked about and expand on some other topics that we didn't get a chance to hit. And that's the second paragraph right on my homepage.
Okay, great. So I will provide a link directly to that in the show notes.
Great.
And again, your website again is varsityedge.com.
Yep.
All right. And are you out there on Twitter or Facebook or anything else where people can follow you?
I am on Facebook, facebook.com/varsityedge.
All right, great. Well, I really appreciate all the great information you provided for us, and hopefully people will contact you if they need further assistance in this as well.
I appreciate you reaching out to me, Brad.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
The latest tips, tricks, and tools you can use today. This is Brad Recommends on Taming the High Cost of College.
Today on Brad Recommends, I'm going to recommend that you take full advantage of this podcast. What do I mean by that? Well, this podcast now has 35 episodes, and there's all kinds of great information available on the podcast. And if this is your first podcast or one of your more recent podcasts, you can go back and look at the library of all the old podcasts. So as an example, if you have interest in learning more about need-based aid, podcasts 2 and 3 are about need-based aid. Number 5 is about scholarships, another great topic. If you're interested in ACT or SAT test prep planning, those would be episodes 4 and 33. If your family is divorced or have divorce and college issues, you need to listen to episode number 11. And the list goes on. So there's all kinds of great information available. You can get to any of the past episodes by going to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/ then the episode number. In other words, if you wanted to find episode 5 about scholarships, go to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/5. Another option is if you're familiar with iTunes or Stitcher, you can sign up for the podcast there and then request all the back episodes be downloaded to your devices as well, or if you use some other form of podcast player. So that's another option, is to just download past episodes and listen to them at your convenience. All right, that's all we have for today. I appreciate you listening. If you feel like you're getting some good information from this podcast, I would appreciate it if you went to iTunes and gave us a rating. And also forward this information to any friends or family that you think might benefit from what you've learned today. So that's all we have for today. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns 2 companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.